Last week, the residents of Rouen Pierre Dupree called his sick aunt, who lives in Paris, and asked him to come to her urgently. The nephew did not force himself to ask twice and, getting into the car, rushed to her. He definitely did not recognize the road. Besides, for some reason, the lanterns were not lit, and the asphalt was suddenly replaced by crushed stone. He was also surprised that he did not meet a single car on the way. Pierre decided that he was lost, and when he saw a two-story building, he stopped to ask how he could get to Paris. The door was opened to him by an elderly man with a candle in his hand. Staring at Pierre, he asked what he needed. Pierre explained. Two women, apparently, the wife and daughter of that man, ran out of the house and, calling him a redneck, replied that he was in Paris itself. It was only then that Pierre noticed that his interlocutors were dressed in medieval clothes. They, in turn, looked at his leather jacket and jeans with amazement. Suddenly there was a clatter of hooves. "Catholics," the man shouted. "We must save ourselves," and, turning to Pierre, expressed the hope that he was a Huguenot. Pierre realized with horror that he had fallen into a time loop, which he had only known about by hearsay until now. He was always interested in the past, but the last thing he wanted to get into the era of the famous religious wars. Without hesitation, he pushed his casual acquaintances into the car and stepped on the gas. Pierre brought the Huguenot family to Rouen. Speechless with fright, they did not react to anything. After spending the night at Pierre's, they left in the morning without even waking him up, and disappeared from his life forever. In April 1992, the Italian Bruno Leone went for a walk with his wife and disappeared into thin air right before her eyes. When she reported the incident to the police, she was advised to see a psychiatrist. However, 2 days later, Bruno returned home safely. However, he looked confused. According to him, he got into the XXV century. Outlandish people in identical clothes regarded him as an exotic animal. When they heard that he came from Italy, they rolled their eyes in surprise, claiming that the country with that name disappeared from the face of the earth back in the XXI century. He was surprised that, walking around the city of the future, he did not see a single building of the XX century and not a single tree. The hungry Bruno was kindly taken by the descendants to a cafe where only one dish was served, a colorless cloudy jelly that resembled a spread jellyfish. Nasty to the taste, however, it instantly quenched hunger. Having warned him about the coming cataclysms, the hospitable hosts opened a geographical map to show places where it would be possible to escape, but as soon as they pointed their finger at Mongolia, Bruno suddenly found himself at home. An equally mysterious case occurred in 1988 on one of the streets of Tokyo, where a car hit an unknown man who died on the spot. The driver and witnesses claimed that the victim appeared on the road suddenly, as if she had fallen from the sky. The police drew attention to the fact that the deceased was dressed in a suit of obviously antique cut. They were even more surprised by the passport issued, exactly 100 years ago. In the man's pocket, they also managed to find business cards indicating his profession, an artist of the Tokyo Imperial Theater. It turned out that the specified street has not existed for more than 70 years. The police interviewed all residents of Tokyo bearing the same surname. After many days of searching, an old woman was found who reported that her father had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. He went to a friend to play a game of Go, and did not return. The woman showed the police a photo in which a young man, surprisingly similar to a man who was hit by a car, was holding a little girl in his arms. There was a date on the picture, May 1902. One of the archaeological finds confirming time travel took place in China. In 2008, archaeologists working on the excavation of a burial site in Guangxi province hoped to discover the remains of the Chinese emperor of the Ming dynasty, whose reign was at the turn of the 15th century. Sealed 400 years ago, the tomb is being opened for the first time. With the utmost care, scientists remove the fossilized layers of soil and get to the tombstone. And then the first find awaits them. As soon as the dust is removed from the stove, a strange object that looks like a ring breaks off from it. But after clearing the traces of time, rust and fossils, archaeologists freeze. There are real Swiss watches in front of them, the back cover of which contains the Swiss engraving. It is quite clear that in the 15th century there were no Swiss watches, and there was no technology for making wristwatches. A strange artifact, and there is no other way to call it, is sent to Beijing for study, where the authenticity of the origin of the watch is established, and by serial number and date of manufacture, 100 years ago. The results of the study are somewhat shocking to researchers. How could the clock have got into a tomb sealed 400 years before its appearance? This finding baffles researchers. It is impossible to explain such a thing from the point of view of science familiar to us. At first, it was assumed that the watch was put in the tomb along with other decorations. But the reign of the Ming dynasty fell on the 14th and 16th centuries. Whereas, watchmakers began to create wristwatches only by the end of the 17th century. According to scientists, only one version can explain the appearance of the clock in the tomb, several centuries before its manufacture. The clock has made a journey through time. But then, we must admit the fact that someone owns the technology of time travel.